Imagine this for a second. You've been talking to a woman consistently. She's used to hearing from you. She's used to that regular flow of conversation, those little check-ins that let her know you're interested, that you're still engaged. And then suddenly, you stop. The calls don't come, the texts don't show up, the energy that was once there just disappears. Now, what does she do? The very first thing she does is question the silence, because for her, silence isn't neutral. Silence is loud. It makes her think, it makes her wonder, and the mind has this funny way of filling in blanks with stories. She'll start by replaying the last few conversations you had. Was there something she said that upset you? Was there something she missed? Did she make a mistake without realizing it? She begins analyzing. Not because she's insecure or desperate, but because she's human. And when connection has been the norm, disconnection feels unnatural. Think about it. When someone takes something away suddenly, your brain doesn't just shrug and go, "Oh well." No, your brain tries to find the reason. If you walk into a room and a light that's always been on is suddenly off, you don't just ignore it. You check the switch. You wonder if the bulb blew out. You figure out if the power went down. That's what she's doing with your silence. She's checking all the possible switches in her mind, trying to make sense of the darkness. Now here's the powerful part. In those moments, you've actually got her attention more than when you were consistently talking. Why? Because silence creates contrast. When we're used to something being there, we don't always notice its value. But the moment it disappears, it becomes impossible to ignore. So when you stop talking, she doesn't just miss the words. You've made her feel the gap you left behind. But this isn't just about her missing you. It's about the kind of questions that start forming in her head. She'll begin with curiosity. Why hasn't he reached out? That's innocent enough. Then it shifts into doubty. Did I do something wrong? Did his feelings change? And eventually it can evolve into self-reflection. Do I even want to chase someone who goes silent on me? That progression is critical because it tells us that silence is never static. It starts as a question about you, but if prolonged, it becomes a decision about her. And let's be real, women are incredibly intuitive. They notice shifts in tone, in rhythm, in consistency. If you were calling every night and suddenly disappear, she's not going to buy the excuse that you were just busy. Busy people still make time when they care, so her mind races. And as it does, she might even test little ways to break the silence, sending a casual text, commenting on something she knows you'll respond to, putting out a line to see if you'll bite. That's her way of saying, "I noticed, and I'm giving you a chance to show up again." But here's the risky: if you stay silent too long, the narrative in her head stops being about curiosity and starts being about clarity. She stops asking what she did wrong and starts telling herself what you did. She'll decide. If he cared, he'd reach out. If he wanted me, he'd say something. And since he hasn't, that tells me everything I need to know. That's the turning point where her initial questioning transforms into her reclaiming her power. And once she reaches that stage, it's no longer about you, it's about her moving on. So when you stop talking to a woman, understand that the silence doesn't sit there untouched. It grows, it echoes, it forces her to confront her own feelings, and it forces her to interpret your actions or your lack of them. And whether you meant to or not, you've now shifted the dynamic. You've taken her from comfort into confusion, from clarity into questioning, and eventually from questioning into decision-making. That's why the first thing she does when you stop talking is question the silence. Because silence is never invisible. It's never just a lack of words. It's communication in itself. And it tells her something, whether you intend for it to or not. So the question isn't really what she'll do when you stop talking. The real question is, are you prepared for the story she creates in your absence? When the silence begins, when that communication she's used to suddenly disappears, the next stage is where her emotions start to shift. At first, it's curiosity. She notices the difference. She wonders why you haven't called, why you haven't checked in. It's subtle, but it nags at her. She might even brush it off in the beginning, telling herself you're probably busy or distracted. But as the silence continues, that curiosity grows stronger. She doesn't just wonder what you're doing. She starts to wonder what you're feeling. And here's the truth. Women are deeply attuned to emotional patterns. They're not just hearing what you say, they're noticing how consistently you say it, how much energy you put into it, how quickly you respond. So when that consistency breaks, it doesn't feel small to her. It feels significant. Curiosity turns into a kind of confusion. She'll ask herself, why now? Why would he pull back after things seemed fine? She might even scroll back through old messages, trying to find a clue she missed, trying to connect dots that aren't there. But the more she thinks, the more her emotions start to shift. Curiosity, if left unchecked, often leads to doubt. She begins to wonder if maybe your feelings have changed. She questions if her perception of the connection was real. Did she misread your interest? Was she giving more than you were? That little seed of doubt can grow quickly because in the absence of words, her imagination fills in the gaps. And the imagination, when it comes to love and attraction, rarely paints neutral pictures. It paints extremes. Now, this is the fascinating part. Your silence doesn't just make her think about you. It makes her think about herself in relation to you. She starts asking, am I the kind of woman who should be waiting around for someone who goes quiet like this? Am I doing too much? Should I even care this much? Suddenly, the silence isn't just about you. It's forcing her to evaluate who she is, what she deserves, and whether this connection is truly serving her. And while all of that is happening, her emotions don't move in a straight line. They shift back and forth. One moment she's missing you, wanting you to break the silence, checking her phone hoping your name pops up. The next moment she's frustrated, telling herself she doesn't need this, convincing herself she shouldn't even be entertaining someone who isn't showing up consistently. That push and pull, that internal tug of war is exhausting for her, and it all comes from one simple act: your silence. The danger, of course, is that while silence can create attraction in the very short term, because it introduces mystery, it also risks creating resentment if it drags on too long. Because no woman wants to feel like she's chasing clarity. No woman wants to feel like she has to decode what your silence means. She wants honesty. She wants consistency. And if she doesn't get that, she starts emotionally protecting herself. That protection might look like pulling back her own energy. She stops texting first. She delays her responses. She tells herself she has to mirror your distance so she doesn't feel foolish for caring more. Or, on the other hand, it might look like overcompensating. She reaches out more, she tries harder to get your attention because she doesn't want to lose the connection. But whichever way she responds, it's never neutral. Silence is movement. Even if it looks like nothing from the outside, it's creating shifts within her. And here's what's really interesting. The story she tells herself about your silence will shape her entire emotional response. If she decides you're pulling back because you're losing interest, she'll start detaching to protect herself. If she convinces herself you're just testing her or playing games, she'll either get frustrated or decide to play along. If she believes you're genuinely overwhelmed with something important, she might show compassion, but only for so long before she starts to question if she's really a priority. That's why this stage is so crucial. Curiosity is innocent. Curiosity keeps her engaged, keeps her wondering, but curiosity doesn't last forever. If you leave her in that space too long, it morphs into doubt, and doubt erodes attraction faster than anything, because attraction thrives on certainty, on the feeling that, even if things aren't perfect, she knows where she stands with you. So when you stop talking, you're not just taking away words, you're creating a vacuum where her emotions shift and spiral, where her thoughts race, where her heart goes from hopeful to defensive. And the longer you let her sit in that silence, the more she begins to rewrite the story of what you two were. At first, she's wondering where you are. Soon after, she's wondering why she's even wondering at all. That's the danger of silence. It doesn't stay curiosity forever. It becomes confusion, it becomes doubt, and eventually it becomes distance. When you stop talking to a woman, something powerful begins to happen inside her. Beyond the confusion, beyond the curiosity, there comes this deeper stage where she begins to test her own importance in your life. And that's not just about you, it's about her stepping back and asking herself, where do I actually stand here? What role do I play in his world? That silence you've created forces her to measure her place in the connection. And more importantly, to measure how much of herself she's willing to give to someone who may or may not value her. At first, she'll interpret the silence as a sign. Maybe you're busy, maybe you're distracted, maybe something's going on. But as the silence stretches, she realizes she's not just interpreting you, she's evaluating herself. Because every time she reaches out and doesn't get the energy back, every time she notices you've pulled away without explanation, she has to decide whether she'll keep investing. And that decision is huge because it taps into something core in her, her need to feel chosen. See, it's not just about attraction anymore. It's about significance. She doesn't want to be someone who exists in the background of your life, someone you talk to when it's convenient. She wants to feel that she matters, that she has weight, that if she disappeared tomorrow, you would notice. So when you disappear first, even temporarily, it forces her to confront whether that significance is actually there or if it was only an illusion. This is where the dynamic shifts. If she feels she has importance in your life, she may give you grace. She may remind herself that everyone needs space, that not every silence is rejection. But if she starts to feel like she's fighting for relevance, that silence becomes painful. It becomes a mirror showing her how little she's being prioritized. And no woman, no matter how much she cares, wants to be left wondering if she really matters to someone she's giving her time, her energy, her emotions to. And here's the reality: silence doesn't just make her question you. It makes her test herself. She'll ask, am I overvaluing someone who isn't showing the same effort? Am I investing in someone who isn't investing in me? Am I giving the best of myself to someone who doesn't even notice the gift? And those questions, once they begin, are hard to silence. Because deep down, she knows the truth. If she has to convince herself she's important to you, then maybe she isn't as important as she hoped. Now, some women respond by holding on tighter. They test their importance by trying harder, seeing if they can pull you back in, watching if their efforts make a difference. Others take the opposite route. They stop reaching out, they mirror the silence, and they wait to see if you'll notice their absence. Both reactions are tests, but they come from the same place: the need to confirm whether or not they actually matter to you. The dangerous part is that once she's in this stage, she's no longer just reacting emotionally. She's making judgments. She's collecting evidence. Every day you stay silent, every hour you don't reach out, every moment you don't bridge that gap, she adds another piece to the file in her mind. And eventually that file becomes a verdict. She'll decide, if I was truly important, he wouldn't leave me questioning. He wouldn't leave me in this space of doubt. And once she makes that decision, it's very hard to undo. What's so striking about this process is that it doesn't matter how great things were before. You could have had incredible chemistry, amazing conversations, laughter, closeness. But when silence enters, all of that gets put under a microscope. She starts asking, was any of that real? Or was I the only one who felt it? And because people tend to trust actions over words, your silence speaks louder than anything you ever said. That's why this stage is so critical. Because when a woman starts testing her importance in your life, she's not just questioning you. She's deciding about herself. She's deciding what kind of treatment she's willing to accept, what kind of man she's willing to give her heart to, and whether or not she can truly see a future with someone who disappears when things get inconvenient. That decision is not about her being cold or detached. It's about her protecting her self-worth. And once she anchors into that truth, she either reaffirms that she means something to you, or she concludes that she doesn't. And whichever way she lands, her actions will follow. She'll either open the door again and let you back in, or she'll close it and walk away without looking back. So when you stop talking, understand that she's not just waiting around. She's evaluating. She's testing. She's weighing her place in your life against her value as a woman. And the story she decides on will dictate whether she fights to stay or finally finds the strength to let go. When you stop talking to a woman, after she's gone through the questioning, after she's wrestled with the curiosity, after she's tested her own importance in your life, something else begins to happen. She starts to mirror you. She looks at the energy you're giving and she matches it. If you've pulled back, she pulls back. If you've gone quiet, she goes quiet. It's not because she doesn't care anymore. It's because she refuses to keep pouring energy into someone who isn't pouring back into her. At the beginning, silence feels confusing. She's asking herself, why did he stop talking? Did I do something wrong? But once she sits in that space for long enough, she realizes that chasing you for answers isn't going to get her the clarity she needs. So instead of chasing, she mirrors. You stop calling, she stops calling. You stop texting, she stops texting. And in that moment, the dynamic shifts again. Now, here's what's important to understand: mirroring isn't always a conscious choice. Sometimes it's instinctive. Human beings in relationships naturally reflect the energy they're given. If someone treats you warmly, you become warm. If someone grows distant, you create distance. It's a survival mechanism. It protects you from overinvesting where you're not being valued. And for her, mirroring your silence is her way of protecting her dignity. Because let's face it, no woman wants to feel like she's the only one fighting to keep the connection alive. When she realizes you're not making an effort, she tells herself, I'm not going to make the effort either. And that's not her being cold. It's her preserving her self-respect. It's her saying, if you don't want to meet me halfway, I'm not going to keep running the full distance toward you. What's interesting about this stage is that it often feels like nothing is happening. From the outside, it looks like two people just not talking. But inside, everything is happening. The silence becomes a test of who will break first, who will show vulnerability, who will decide the connection is worth reviving. And many times, when she mirrors your distance, she's waiting to see if you'll step back in. It's almost like she's silently asking, do I matter enough for you to notice my absence? But here's the risk. If you don't respond, if you stay in that silence too long, mirroring stops being a temporary reaction and starts becoming her new normal. She acclimates to the distance. She adjusts to not hearing from you. She gets used to filling that emotional space with other things, friends, work, passions, even other people. And when she reaches that point, it's no longer a tactic. It's who she's become in the relationship. Detached, independent, unavailable to you. And this is where a lot of men get confused. They think, she used to care so much. She used to reach out all the time. She used to be invested. Why is she so cold now? The answer is simple. She mirrored your energy for so long that she learned to live without yours. That's the danger of silence. It doesn't just give her a break from you. It gives her practice in not needing you. But here's the other side of mirroring. In some cases, it reignites attraction. Because if she stops talking when you stop talking, you suddenly feel her absence. You notice she's no longer chasing. You notice she's no longer trying. And in that moment, it forces you to decide, are you willing to step back in, or are you comfortable losing her? That shift often creates clarity, not just for her, but for you as well. So mirroring, as much as it might look passive, is actually one of the most powerful responses she can have. It's her way of saying, I'll match what you give me. If you give me effort, I'll give you effort. If you give me silence, I'll give you silence. But I'm not going to keep tipping the scales while you stand still. That balance she's creating is her way of reclaiming control in a situation where she felt powerless before. And once she steps into that mindset, you're no longer the one setting the tone. She is. Because now you're the one who has to decide if the silence between you is going to continue, or if you're going to bridge it before she fully accepts it as the new reality. So when you stop talking to her, don't think she's just sitting there endlessly waiting. She's mirroring. She's adjusting. She's protecting her dignity. And in that reflection, she may just teach herself how to live without you. When you stop talking to a woman, there comes a moment where she no longer sits in the confusion, no longer just mirrors your silence, but instead begins to reclaim her power. And one of the most profound ways she does that is by redirecting her focus back onto herself. She decides, consciously or unconsciously, that if you aren't going to give her the consistency, the attention, the effort she deserves, then she is going to pour that energy into her own world instead. That silence, which once hurt, becomes the very thing that motivates her to rise higher in her independence. At first, she might have been checking her phone, wondering if you would message, questioning what happened. But eventually, she recognizes the futility of waiting. And instead of letting that silence eat away at her, she flips the script. She says, if he's not reaching out, then maybe that's my sign to stop reaching out too, and to start reaching inward. And that's when everything begins to change. You see, women have an incredible capacity for nurturing. They give, they invest, they care, often at levels that surprise even themselves. But when that energy isn't being reciprocated, when she feels it's being wasted on someone who isn't showing up, she has a choice. She can keep pouring into a cup that never fills, or she can take all of that love and all of that effort and pour it back into herself. And when she chooses the latter, something powerful happens. She starts focusing on her career, her goals, her passions. She reconnects with her friends. She finds joy in her hobbies again. She invests in her body, her health, her mental well-being. She begins building a life that excites her, one that doesn't depend on whether or not you decide to pick up the phone. And here's the beautiful irony: the very silence that once made her feel small becomes the catalyst for her growth. And this growth isn't just practical, it's emotional too. She learns that her happiness isn't tied to your attention. She rediscovers that she has control over her own mood, her own energy, her own direction. Where once she might have been waiting for your message to brighten her day, she now creates moments that light her up regardless of what you do. That shift is profound, because when a woman realizes she can stand tall without leaning on someone who isn't steady, she doesn't just reclaim her independence, she reclaims her self-worth. Now, it's not that she suddenly stops caring. She might still think about you. She might still wonder why you pulled away. But the difference is that she no longer places her identity in that wondering. Instead, she channels that energy into action, and action builds momentum. With every step she takes toward herself, she proves to herself that she doesn't need your attention to feel valuable. She doesn't need your consistency to feel secure. She doesn't need your validation to feel beautiful, wanted, or worthy. And the interesting thing is, that kind of independence often makes her even more magnetic. Because people are drawn to those who don't cling, to those who radiate self-sufficiency. When she's no longer chasing, when she's living her life fully, she exudes a strength that can't be ignored. You may notice it. Others certainly will. And she begins to see herself in a new light, not as someone waiting, but as someone thriving. But here's the key. Once she gets to that place, it's very difficult to pull her back into the old one. Once she knows she can create happiness without you, she won't settle for anything less than someone who genuinely adds to the happiness she's already built. And that's the danger of silence. You think she'll always be there, waiting, checking, hoping. But often, your silence gives her the very space she needs to remember she doesn't have to wait at all. That's why this stage is so powerful, because it's no longer about you, it's about her. It's about her reclaiming her energy, her time, her focus, and realizing she has so much more to give the world than sitting in uncertainty, and in doing so, she elevates, she grows, she becomes the strongest version of herself. So when you stop talking, understand this: she won't just sit still. She won't just linger in the waiting. She'll rise. She'll take that silence and transform it into fuel. And once she has found her power again, she won't trade it for anyone who made her feel powerless in the first place. When you stop talking to a woman, there eventually comes a point where the back and forth of emotions, the confusion, the testing, the mirroring, and even the reclaiming of her independence all lead her to one simple but powerful decision. She will decide whether to move on or whether she's willing to let you back in. And this decision doesn't come lightly. It's not impulsive. It's the product of everything she's felt during that silence, every unanswered question, or every moment she sat wondering where she stood. By the time she gets here, she's already run the entire emotional marathon. And this final stage is where she plants her flag and says, "This is what I'm choosing." The interesting thing about this stage is that you're no longer the one in control. Silence might have begun as your choice. You were the one who stopped talking. You were the one who created the distance. But she is the one who chooses how the story ends. Because by now, she's not just reacting to you anymore. She's responding to herself, to her values, to what she ultimately wants for her life. For some women, that choice means closing the door for good. She tells herself, I can't build a life with someone who leaves me questioning. I can't invest in someone who disappears when things get inconvenient. And she walks away, not because she stopped caring, but because she knows that caring isn't enough without consistency. And when she makes that choice, she doesn't look back. That's the kind of strength silence can create. The strength to move on from someone she once thought she couldn't live without. For other women, though, the choice might be to leave the door slightly open. To say, I'll give him a chance to show up again. I'll allow him to step back into this if he's truly willing to be present. And in that space, she's not being passive, she's being intentional. She's making a conscious decision to see whether you'll match her effort, whether you'll take the silence as a wake-up call to actually show up differently. If you do, she may let you back in. But make no mistake, she'll be looking at you with new eyes. She'll be watching for whether the pattern repeats, whether your words are backed up with action, whether this time she's actually a priority. This is why silence is so pivotal. It pushes her to a crossroads. And at that crossroads, she's not just choosing you or not choosing you. She's choosing herself. She's choosing the version of her future she wants to live. A future where she feels seen, valued, and secure, or a future where she continues to live in uncertainty, hoping someone will eventually step up. And once she tastes the clarity of that choice, it becomes very difficult to sway her. What's striking here is that you may think you still have time. You may think, I'll reach out eventually. She'll still be there. But what you don't realize is that in her silence, she's already decided what your silence means. And by the time you finally decide to speak again, her decision may already be made. That's why so many men are shocked when they finally try to come back, only to find that the woman has moved on, that she's no longer available, no longer interested, no longer emotionally open to the connection. They thought they were in control by pulling back, but in reality, the control shifted the moment she stopped waiting and started choosing. And here's the truth: when she chooses to move on, she doesn't always do it loudly. She doesn't always announce it. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a slow withdrawal, a steady redirecting of her energy. You might not even notice it at first, but when you finally look for her, she's already gone. And when she chooses to give you another chance, it's also not dramatic. It's cautious. It's deliberate. It's her testing whether you're going to rise to the level she needs. But either way, the choice is hers, and the choice is final. So when you stop talking, understand what you're really doing. You're not just pulling away. You're handing her the pen and asking her to write the ending. And she will. She'll either write the chapter where she closes the book on you completely, or she'll write the chapter where she lets you back in under new terms. But she's the one writing it, not you. And that's the reality of silence. It always leads to a decision. And that decision, once made, changes everything.